The hallway outside General Marcus Hale's office was completely empty at 2:07 a.m., and that was the first thing that terrified Captain Elena Vasquez, not the armed guards standing unusually far from the door, not the missing security cameras she could have sworn were there yesterday, not even the fact that every officer she passed downstairs suddenly stopped speaking the moment they saw her, walking toward the restricted command floor. Board. Silence. The kind of silence that only exists in places where people already know something terrible is happening, and have learned not to acknowledge it. Elena's boots echoed softly against the polished, black military corridor, while red emergency lights pulsed faintly through the darkness. Headquarters looked completely different after midnight. During the day, the building felt powerful, patriotic, controlled. At night, it felt predatory. Her fingers tightened around the classified folder she'd been ordered to deliver personally to General Hale. No assistant, no escort, no explanation. Just one sentence from command. The general requested you alone. That word stayed inside her head during the entire elevator ride upstairs. Alone. When Elena reached the office doors, she noticed something strange immediately. The hallway surveillance monitors outside Hale's private command suite were switched off completely. Static flickered across the screens, like the system had been intentionally disconnected. Her pulse slowed uneasily. Then she heard it. A woman crying. Very softly. Somewhere behind the general's office wall. Elena froze instantly. The sound disappeared almost immediately afterward, followed by complete silence again. Before she could process what she'd heard, the office doors unlocked automatically with a low mechanical click. General Marcus Hale stood inside waiting for her beneath dim blue lighting overlooking Washington, D.C. through massive, reinforced glass windows. Perfectly composed, watching her. You're late, Captain. His voice wasn't loud. Somehow, that made it worse. Elena stepped inside, carefully while the heavy security doors locked behind her. Automatically, sound echoed through the office like a prison gate closing. Her stomach tightened immediately. General Hale slowly removed his black leather gloves while studying her face with unsettling patience. His office didn't feel military. It felt personal. Luxury whiskey cabinet, low ambient lighting, no active communication systems visible. No witnesses. You've been performing exceptionally lately, Hale said quietly. Elena remained standing. Thank you, sir. Hale gestured toward the chair directly across from his desk. Sit. She obeyed automatically, though every instinct inside her body suddenly wanted to leave. The general walked slowly around the room. Instead of sitting down immediately, his movements were controlled, predatory, like he enjoyed letting silence pressure people emotionally before conversations even began. Finally, he stopped behind her chair. Too close. You know why ambitious officers fail inside this command structure? He asked softly. Elena stared forward. No, sir. Hale leaned slightly closer. Because eventually, he whispered, they confuse military loyalty with personal safety. A chill moved down Elena's spine. Then, General Hale placed a classified, black folder onto the desk in front of her. No rank markings. No operation label, only her name printed across the front. And, when Elena slowly opened it, the first photograph inside was of herself entering his private residence 3 nights earlier. Except she had never been there. Captain Elena Vasquez didn't sleep after leaving General Marcus Hale's office that night. She returned to her private quarters inside Arlington military housing just before sunrise. But the classified photograph inside the black folder followed her like a virus spreading through her thoughts. The image showed her entering Hale's private residence 3 nights earlier, at exactly 1:14 a.m., timestamp verified, security angle, authentic, military encryption watermark, impossible to fake. But Elena remembered exactly where she had been that night, alone, inside the cyber intelligence division reviewing satellite reports until nearly morning. She remembered the fluorescent lights, the burnt coffee smell, even the headache behind her eyes, from staring at classified drone footage too long. Yet somehow the photograph still existed. That was the detail slowly destroying her emotionally. Not fear, uncertainty. By 7:30 a.m., headquarters looked normal again. Officers walked through corridors holding coffee. Analysts rushed between intelligence briefings. Soldiers laughed near elevators. The building had transformed back into the illusion of order. But Elena couldn't stop noticing things she'd ignored before. The silence whenever General Hale's name appeared in conversation. The way female officers kept interactions with senior command painfully short. The nervous glances people exchanged before entering restricted executive corridors. Fear lived inside the building already. People had simply learned how to survive beside it quietly. Elena sat through morning intelligence briefing, unable to focus while General Hale remained at the far end of the classified operations room leading discussions calmly like nothing unusual had happened hours earlier. His composure terrified her most. He never stared at her directly during the meeting, never acknowledged their midnight interaction publicly, but several times she noticed him pausing slightly whenever other officers praised her recent performance, almost possessively, like he was silently reminding the room she belonged under his authority now. After briefing dismissal, Lieutenant Noah Mercer caught up beside her, near the elevator banks. "You look exhausted," he said quietly. Elena forced composure immediately. "Long night." Noah studied her expression carefully. Unlike most officers inside headquarters, Noah actually looked at people instead of through them. That made him dangerous in a different way. "The general kept you late." The question landed carefully. Too carefully. Elena immediately felt defensive. "Why?" Noah glanced briefly toward nearby surveillance cameras before lowering his voice. "Because officers don't usually come back from private meetings with Hale." Looking psychologically shaken, her pulse tightened. "You're imagining things." Noah gave a faint, humorless smile. "That's what everyone says at first." Before Elena could respond, the senior officers entered the hallway suddenly, and Noah's expression changed instantly back into professional neutrality. "Be careful upstairs," he muttered quietly before walking away. Upstairs, the word lingered heavily in her mind afterward. By afternoon, Elena received another classified directive. Level 7 clearance granted. Report to Executive Command Floor. 2300 hours. No note escort authorized. Her stomach tightened immediately. Level 7 clearance didn't officially exist within standard military structure. She knew that because intelligence officers studied classified chain-of-command architecture extensively during training. Yet the authorization code attached to the order carried General Hale's personal security credentials directly, which meant refusing it would effectively mean refusing Hale himself. The rest of the day passed under growing psychological pressure. Every hallway felt narrower. Every interaction felt observed. At one point, Elena noticed Colonel Rebecca Shaw watching her silently from across the operations floor, with an expression that looked disturbingly close to pity, that unsettled her more than fear would have. Around 10:40 p.m., Elena finally entered the restricted executive elevator alone. No buttons existed inside except biometric scanner access. The doors closed automatically behind her before she could reconsider anything. As the elevator ascended, the normal military floors disappeared from the digital display entirely. Floor numbers stopped after level 5. Then the screen simply went black. Elena felt the movement continue upward anyway. Her reflection stared back at her through polished steel walls. Tense shoulders, controlled breathing, fear hidden beneath military discipline. For the first time in her career, she realized discipline and safety were not the same thing. The elevator finally opened into complete silence. Level 7 looked nothing like military headquarters. Luxury black marble floors reflected dim red security lights across massive empty corridors. Modern artwork hung beside classified surveillance systems. Expensive whiskey shelves sat behind glass walls near executive lounges. No soldiers visible. No active staff. It felt less like a command floor and more like a private empire hidden inside government infrastructure. Elena stepped forward cautiously while distant thunder echoed beyond reinforced windows overlooking Washington. Then she noticed the photographs, framed portraits lining the hallway walls. Female officers, different years, different ranks, every portrait signed personally by General Marcus Hale. Underneath, Elena moved closer slowly. Captain Laura Bennett, Commander Elise Warren, Major Hannah Cole. Some names she recognized, others she didn't. But one detail connected all of them instantly. None still worked inside military command anymore. Her pulse accelerated. A voice suddenly echoed behind her. Most people never noticed the pattern. Elena turned sharply. Colonel Rebecca Shaw stood near the end of the corridor beneath cold fluorescent lighting. Exhaustion covered her face like permanent damage. Elena lowered her voice immediately. "What is this place?" Rebecca looked around the empty luxury floor carefully before answering. The part of the military nobody survives emotionally. Elena stared at her. Rebecca stepped closer slowly. Did Hale show you the photographs already? Elena's silence answered enough. Rebecca's face darkened. Then he's accelerating faster with you than usual. Fear climbed quietly through Elena's chest now. What does that mean? Rebecca hesitated for several seconds before speaking again. The general doesn't destroy careers immediately. Her voice sounded emotionally hollow. First, he isolates people psychologically. Elena's heartbeat slowed uneasily. Why are you telling me this? Rebecca looked directly into her eyes for the first time. Because nobody warned me. Before Elena could respond, every hallway light suddenly dimmed red, simultaneously across the executive floor. A mechanical voice echoed overhead. General Hale has entered level 7. Rebecca's face lost color instantly. Go, she whispered sharply. Now. Heavy footsteps echoed somewhere deep within the corridor behind them. Slow.com. Controlled Elena turned toward the sound instinctively while shadows stretched across the luxury hallway beneath pulsing emergency lights. Then General Marcus Hale's voice echoed through the darkness. Captain Vasquez, he said softly, you weren't supposed to see this floor alone. The moment General Marcus Hale's voice echoed through the corridor, Colonel Rebecca Shaw stepped backward immediately like someone reacting to a loaded weapon. Elena noticed the fear before Rebecca could hide it. Real fear. Not professional caution, not military respect, fear learned through experience. That realization hit Elena harder than Hale's sudden appearance itself. The general emerged slowly from the far end of the luxury hallway beneath pulsing red emergency lights, black formal military coat draped perfectly across his shoulders, silver insignias reflecting softly against polished marble floors. He looked composed, untouched by stress, like the entire restricted floor belonged emotionally to him alone. Hale's cold blue eyes moved first toward Rebecca. Colonel Rebecca straightened instantly, despite visible tension in her face. Sir, silence followed, heavy, deliberate. Hale walked closer without breaking eye contact. You're off schedule tonight. Rebecca lowered her gaze slightly. I was reviewing surveillance discrepancies. Hale studied her for several painful seconds before finally nodding once. Leave us. Elena immediately looked toward Rebecca, silently hoping she'd stay. But Rebecca obeyed without hesitation. She passed Elena quietly, though as she moved by, she whispered one sentence low enough only Elena could hear. Never let him isolate your reality. Then she disappeared down the corridor without looking back. The warning settled inside Elena's chest uncomfortably. Hale noticed her expression instantly. Rebecca tends to dramatize things emotionally. Elena stayed guarded. She seemed afraid. Hale's face remained unreadable. Fear and discipline often resemble each other in military environments. He gestured casually toward the portraits lining the hallway walls. You were looking at my former command officers. Elena glanced back toward the photographs again. None of them are here anymore. People evolve. Hale walked beside the portraits slowly while speaking. Some adapt to power. Others become emotionally unstable beneath it. Elena noticed how carefully he framed every sentence. Nothing openly threatening. Nothing explicit. Yet every answer still felt psychologically invasive somehow. Hale stopped beside one particular portrait. Commander Elise Warren, blonde, decorated, beautiful in a severe military way. She was brilliant, Hale said quietly. Fastest strategic analysts I'd ever promoted. Elena looked toward him carefully. What happened to her? Hale's expression barely changed. She confused professional intimacy with emotional dependency. The wording disturbed Elena immediately. Meaning, Hale turned toward her. Meaning ambitious people sometimes invent abuse when they regret the personal sacrifices success required. Silence filled the corridor afterward. Elena felt the manipulation inside his explanation immediately, even if she couldn't fully articulate why. Hale continued walking. That's the problem with modern institutions, he said calmly. Weak people reinterpret pressure as trauma afterward. Elena crossed her arms slightly. And the women on these walls? Hale looked toward the portraits again. They all wanted extraordinary careers. His voice lowered subtly. Extraordinary careers cost extraordinary things. The answer sent cold tension down Elena's spine. Before she could respond, Hale motioned toward a set of dark double doors further down the corridor. Come, Elena hesitated briefly, before following him deeper into level 7. The restricted executive floor seemed endless. Private lounges, soundproof conference suites, classified surveillance stations hidden behind smoked glass, luxury environments completely disconnected from ordinary military infrastructure downstairs. The deeper they walked, the less the building resembled government headquarters and the more it resembled a private kingdom built inside national defense itself. Eventually, Hale stopped outside another office. No nameplate, only biometric lock access. The doors opened automatically as they approached. Elena stepped inside cautiously and immediately realized this wasn't an office at all. It was a private apartment. Luxury penthouse architecture hidden inside the military command structure. Expensive whiskey shelves, dark leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Washington, D.C. at night. Even worse, women's clothing still hung neatly beside one side of the room. Elena's pulse tightened immediately. Hale removed his gloves calmly while watching her reaction. "You seem uncomfortable. Why is there an apartment inside headquarters?" Hale poured himself a drink before answering. "Because command officers don't always have the luxury of leaving." Elena looked toward the clothing again. "Who stays here?" Hale's eyes met hers through the reflection of the city skyline behind him. "Sometimes people under my protection." Protection, the word felt toxic coming from him now. Elena stepped carefully through the room, while her instincts screamed at her to leave. Then she noticed another detail that stopped her cold. Photographs, framed carefully beside the bookshelf. Hale standing beside several female officers from the portraits outside, smiling privately with them. Vacation settings, private dinners, rooftop gatherings, intimate emotional closeness disguised as mentorship. Elena's stomach twisted. This isn't normal. Hale watched her quietly for several seconds. Normal people don't reach elite command structures. The answer came too quickly. "To rehearse." Elena turned toward him fully now. "What exactly do you want from me?" Silence stretched across the luxury apartment. Hale walked slowly closer while thunder flashed across the Washington skyline outside. "You're intelligent enough to understand power emotionally." His voice remained calm. "That makes you rare." Elena stepped backward slightly. Hale noticed immediately. "You think I'm dangerous?" She said nothing. Hale smiled faintly for the first time. "Good." The response chilled her instantly. He continued approaching slowly, controlled, emotionally invasive without physically touching her. "Fear creates honesty between people." Elena's breathing became uneven now. "You manipulate everyone around you." Hale tilted his head slightly. "Leadership is emotional manipulation with patriotic branding." The honesty stunned her silent. Hale stepped beside the massive windows overlooking the city below. "Do you know what weak commanders fear most?" Elena stayed cautious. "Exposure." Hale shook his head once. "Attachment." He looked toward her again. "People become liabilities the moment emotions matter more than loyalty." Elena suddenly understood something horrifying. Hale didn't view relationships normally at all. Every interaction became leverage eventually. Every emotional connection became ownership. That realization made the apartment feel physically unsafe now. Her phone vibrated suddenly inside her coat pocket. One new encrypted message. "Unknown sender. Leave level 7 immediately. He's preparing your transfer." Elena's pulse stopped. Hale noticed the change in her face instantly. "Problem." She locked the phone immediately. "No, sir." Hale studied her carefully. Too carefully. Then his expression shifted slightly for the first time that night. "Suspicion. Who's contacting you?" Elena forced calm. "Routine operations updates." Hale walked toward her slowly again. "Show me." The room suddenly felt suffocating. Elena's instincts screamed not to hand over the phone, but refusing a 4-star general inside a classified restricted floor at nearly 3 a.m. carried consequences. She couldn't predict anymore. Hale stopped directly in front of her now, close enough she could smell whiskey and expensive leather beneath the cold air conditioning. "Captain," he said softly, "give me the phone." Then another message appeared on her screen before she could react. This one visible enough for Hale to read himself. "He knows you saw the wall." Silence consumed the apartment instantly, and for the first time since entering level 7, General Marcus Hale stopped looking. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved inside the apartment. General Marcus Hale stared at the glowing phone screen in Elena's trembling hand while the storm outside washed blue lightning across the penthouse windows behind him. The message remained, visible between them like a live explosive neither person wanted to touch emotionally first. "He knows you saw the wall." Elena immediately understood something dangerous the moment. Hale's expression changed. The general wasn't angry. He was calculating. That terrified her more. Slowly, Hale extended his hand toward the phone. Give it to me. His voice remained controlled, but the softness inside it had disappeared completely now. Elena's instincts screamed at her not to comply, but military conditioning fought against fear automatically. Years of chain of command obedience pulled against survival instinct inside her chest painfully. Hale watched the conflict happening across her face in real time. Then he smiled. Slightly not warm satisfied, because he could see the psychological conditioning working. Captain, he said quietly, you're making this emotionally harder than necessary. Elena finally handed him the phone. Hale studied the encrypted message silently while thunder rolled across Washington outside. The room suddenly felt colder, more predatory. The atmosphere of manipulation was gone now. This felt operational, dangerously operational. Who else have you spoken to tonight? Hale asked without looking up. No one. Lie carefully. Elena's pulse spiked. Haley slowly raised his eyes toward her again. Rebecca Shaw. Silence. That silence answered enough. Hale exhaled slowly through his nose before walking toward the whiskey cabinet. Again, to calm. He poured another drink with steady hands while Elena stood frozen near the center of the room, emotionally trapped between fear and military discipline. She disappoints me repeatedly, he said quietly. Elena forced herself to speak carefully. What exactly is level 7? Hale took a sip before answering. The future of military command. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're authorized to receive. Elena's jaw tightened. You isolate female officers emotionally, monitor them privately, then destroy their careers when they resist you. Hale looked almost amused by the accusation. You still believe this is about gender? What else would it be? Hale stepped closer, slowly again. Control. The words settled heavily into the room. Governments survive through control. Armies survive through control. Intelligence survives through control. His eyes locked onto hers. Human beings simply become emotional when they finally notice the machinery operating around them. Elena's heartbeat accelerated harder now, because part of her hated how rational he sounded. That was the psychological trap. Hale never behaved emotionally unstable. He behaved intellectually convincing. You ruin people, she whispered. No, Hale corrected softly. I select people capable of surviving proximity to power. Elena felt physically sick. Another encrypted message suddenly appeared on the phone still in Hale's hand. Transfer. Initiated. Subject active. Hale's eyes narrowed slightly. Elena noticed immediately. What does that mean? Hale ignored the question entirely. Instead, he walked toward a biometric terminal mounted beside the penthouse wall and entered a long encrypted authorization code manually. Several hidden monitors throughout the apartment activated instantly. Security feeds, restricted military, corridors. Private surveillance angles, confidential personnel records, and one specific screen displaying Elena's full military profile under a flashing red classification label. Transfer. Protocol pending executive authorization. Her stomach dropped. What is that? Hale remained focused on the terminal. Your promotion. That's not a promotion. No, he admitted calmly. It's permanence. Fear climbed violently through Elena's chest now. The walls suddenly felt closer. You're moving me here. Hale finally turned toward her again. Yes. The simplicity of the answer horrified her. You can't force officers into private reassignment housing. Officially, no. He walked toward her slowly while the red security monitors flickered across the apartment walls, but emotionally, Hale tilted his head slightly. People relocate themselves all the time once they understand the consequences of resistance. Elena stepped backward instinctively. You threaten careers. I protect structures. You manipulate fear. I manage reality. Every answer sounded rehearsed over decades. That realization shook her deeply because it meant this wasn't new. Hale had done this before. Many times. The women on the wall. The apartment. Rebecca's warning. The silence. Downstairs. All of it connected now. Elena suddenly looked toward the penthouse. Exit calculating distance automatically. Hale noticed immediately. You're thinking tactically now, he said softly. Good, I'm leaving. No, the word came instantly. Cold. Absolute. For the first time that night. Hale sounded less like a commander and more like ownership itself. Elena forced herself toward the door anyway. The biometric lock flashed red. Access denied. Her pulse exploded. She turned sharply back toward Hale. You locked me in. Hale didn't even deny it. Temporary precaution. That's illegal. Level 7 exists beyond conventional legality. The statement hit like ice water. Elena moved toward another exit corridor quickly. Locked. Then another. Locked. Every escape route sealed. Breathing harder now, she faced him again while thunder shook the glass windows surrounding the penthouse. You're insane. Hale studied her almost sympathetically. No, he said quietly. I simply stopped pretending powerful institutions operate morally. The room suddenly felt airless. Elena's military training fought desperately to maintain composure, but fear was beginning to override discipline physically now. Her hands trembled slightly at her sides. Hale noticed and approached carefully, like calming a frightened animal. Listen to me closely, he said softly. Nothing happening tonight is personal. Elena stared at him in disbelief. You isolated me inside a classified apartment at 3 a.m. because you're valuable. That's not value, that's control. Hale's expression darkened slightly for the first time. Control keeps nations alive. His voice lowered. And people like you confuse emotional discomfort with victimhood. The psychological manipulation inside the sentence landed exactly as intended. Elena could feel it. The twisting of reality, the pressure to doubt her own instincts. That was his real weapon. Not rank, not authority. Psychological destabilization. Then suddenly, the penthouse lights shut off completely. Darkness swallowed the room instantly. Emergency red lighting activated seconds later. A security alarm began pulsing somewhere deep inside. Level 7. Hall turned sharply toward the surveillance monitors. For the first time all night, General Marcus Hale looked genuinely surprised. 1. Mana displayed a single flashing message across the screen. Internal breach detected. Then, another line appeared beneath it. Someone opened the archive room. The moment the words internal breach detected appeared across the monitor, the emotional balance inside the penthouse shifted instantly. For the first time since Elena entered Level 7, General Marcus Hale lost complete control of the atmosphere. It lasted barely 2 seconds, but Elena saw it clearly. Real panic, small, controlled, quickly buried beneath military composure again, but it existed, and that terrified her more than everything else combined, because if someone like Marcus Hale feared the archive room enough to lose composure, then whatever existed inside it was far worse than she imagined. The emergency lights pulsed dark red across the apartment walls, while the alarm continued vibrating faintly through Level 7, like a heartbeat inside the building itself. Hale moved toward the surveillance terminal immediately. Who authorized movement inside archives? He demanded sharply. No response came through the security channel, only static. Elena noticed something important instantly. The General's security systems weren't functioning properly anymore. Someone inside Level 7 knew how to bypass them. Hale entered another override sequence aggressively while multiple surveillance feeds flashed across the monitors. Empty corridors, security checkpoints, executive elevators. Then suddenly, one camera flickered briefly. A hooded figure moved through the restricted hallway outside the archive sector carrying classified files. Against their chest before the screen cut black again. Hale's jaw tightened. Elena, he said coldly, without looking at her. Stay here. She almost laughed from disbelief. You locked me inside your private apartment. That was before. Before. The word mattered. Before the breach. Before somebody exposed something. Before his control started collapsing. Hale moved quickly toward the penthouse exit and entered another biometric authorization manually. The doors unlocked with a heavy mechanical sound. Elena's mind raced instantly. This was her chance. But another realization hit immediately afterward. If someone inside the archives was exposing Hale, then leaving now might destroy the only proof this entire operation existed. Fear battled survival instinct violently inside her chest. Hale grabbed a black sidearm from a secured wall compartment. That changed everything. Elena's breathing stopped briefly. You carry a weapon inside headquarters against your own officers. Hale checked the magazine calmly. Tonight stopped being administrative. Then he looked directly at her. Stay behind me. Elena stared at him in disbelief. You think I'm following you. You don't understand what's happening yet. The red emergency lights washed across his face, making him look less like a military commander and more like something emotionally hollow, wearing authority as camouflage. Another alarm suddenly echoed through the corridor outside. Archive access violation confirmed. Automated containment initiated. Hale cursed quietly under his breath for the first time all night. That unsettled Elena deeply. He was afraid of containment protocols, which meant Level 7 had systems even he couldn't fully override. Hale moved into the hallway quickly. After one final hesitation, Elena followed. The executive corridors looked completely different under emergency lockdown. Steel blast doors were slowly descending across several sections of Level 7, while red warning lights rotated overhead through drifting shadows. Somewhere far below, military personnel were likely continuing normal operations. Completely unaware, an internal psychological war was unfolding directly above them. Hale moved fast through the corridor with frightening familiarity. He built this place emotionally. Elena could feel it now. Every hallway designed for secrecy, every locked sector designed for isolation, every room built to separate powerful people from accountability. As they approached the archive wing, Elena noticed framed portraits lining the walls again beneath the flashing red lights. But now she saw something worse. Some portraits had been removed recently. Empty spaces remained where frames once hung, like people had been erased afterward. Who were they? Elena asked quietly while walking. Hale didn't slow down. Former officers. What happened to them? Silence. Then finally, they became operational risks. The answer hit her like cold metal. Not people. Risks. That's how Hale processed human beings emotionally. Ahead, thick blast doors leading toward the archive sector remained half open during containment shutdown. Smoke like emergency mist drifted through the opening, while security sirens pulsed overhead. Hale stopped suddenly before entering. Then he looked toward Elena again carefully. When we go inside, he said calmly, you will see things that require emotional discipline. Elena's voice hardened. You mean evidence? Hale's expression darkened slightly. I mean context. He pushed through the blast doors. The archive room was enormous, far larger than Elena expected. Rows of classified storage systems extended through the darkness beneath cold industrial lighting, while hundreds of surveillance files, military personnel records, psychological evaluations, and encrypted operational documents filled the massive underground chamber. But what froze Elena emotionally were the walls. Photographs. Thousands of them, mostly female officers, different years, different ranks, different departments, some crying, some entering elevators, some leaving Hale's office late at night, some sitting alone, emotionally broken inside parked cars outside headquarters. Surveillance, obsessive surveillance. Elena felt nausea rise violently inside her chest. This is sick. Hale's voice remained calm behind her. This is intelligence gathering. She turned toward him sharply. You monitored them privately. I monitored vulnerability. His wording sounded inhuman now, emotionally detached, like empathy itself had been professionally removed from him years earlier. Then, Elena noticed another section, deeper inside archives. Black folders, hundreds, each labeled with officer names, behavioral reports, emotional profiles, psychological dependency assessments, fear thresholds, career leverage indicators. Elena's breathing became uneven again. Oh my God. Then she found her own file, already prepared. Captain Elena Vasquez. Her hands trembled opening it. Inside were photographs she didn't recognize being taken. Notes about her routines, her emotional behavior, observed weaknesses, stress reactions, even personal details from private conversations she'd had off-duty months earlier. One sentence near the bottom nearly stopped her heart. Subject shows high resistance to isolation conditioning. Strong possibility of eventual compliance through career dependency. Pressure. Elena looked up slowly toward Hale. You studied me. I evaluated you. You psychologically profile women inside your command. I profile ambitious officers. You destroyed their lives. Hale stepped closer slowly beneath the flickering archive lights. No, he said quietly. I exposed what they were willing to sacrifice for power. Elena backed away from him instinctively now. The archive room suddenly felt like the inside of a predator's mind. Then, a loud metallic crash echoed somewhere deeper inside the archives. Both Elena and Hale turned instantly. Someone else was still inside. Hale raised the sidearm immediately. Elena, he said quietly, get behind me. But before either moved, a familiar voice echoed through the darkness between the archive rows. Don't. Colonel Rebecca Shaw stepped into the emergency lights, holding another classified black folder tightly against her chest. Blood ran down the side of her forehead, and behind her, 2 armed military security officers lay unconscious on the archive floor. The archive room fell completely silent the moment Colonel Rebecca Shaw stepped fully into the red emergency lighting. Blood slid slowly from her forehead onto the collar of her gray military uniform, while the classified black folder remained clutched against her chest like something more valuable than survival itself. Behind her, the two unconscious security officers on the floor confirmed one terrifying reality immediately. Rebecca hadn't come to negotiate, she came prepared to destroy. Level 7. General Marcus Hale raised the sidearm higher without hesitation. His voice stayed calm, but Elena could hear the cold fury underneath it now. You crossed containment protocol. Rebecca laughed once under her breath, a broken laugh. Containment, she whispered. That's what you call it now. The red lights pulsed across the archive walls behind them while alarm sirens continued vibrating through the underground chamber. Thousands of surveillance photographs stared outward from the darkness around them like silent witnesses finally waking up. Hale took one slow step forward, put the folder down. Rebecca's expression hardened instantly. No. The general's eyes narrowed slightly. You're emotionally compromised. Rebecca shook her head slowly. No, Marcus. Her voice trembled with exhaustion. I'm emotionally awake now. Elena watched the exchange carefully, realizing this wasn't the first confrontation between them. Years of psychological warfare existed beneath every sentence. Hale's posture remained composed, but Rebecca looked like someone who had spent years surviving emotional suffocation and finally reached the point where fear stopped mattering. Hale glanced toward Elena without lowering the weapon. You see what instability looks like now. Rebecca looked at Elena immediately. Don't let him do that. Her breathing became uneven. He turns every reaction into weakness, every fear into evidence, every objection into emotional instability. Hale's jaw tightened subtly. Elena, he said calmly, Colonel Shaw violated classified containment laws and assaulted armed officers. Rebecca stepped forward instantly, because they were moving the files. That changed the atmosphere immediately. Hale's expression darkened. What files? Elena asked. Rebecca slowly lifted the black folder in her hands. The transfer records. Her eyes locked onto Elena's. The women from the portraits upstairs weren't reassigned. Cold fear spread through Elena's chest. What happened to them? Rebecca hesitated. That hesitation said enough already. Hale spoke first. Careful. Rebecca ignored him completely now. They disappeared. Silence swallowed the archive room. Elena stared at her. What do you mean disappeared? Rebecca swallowed hard before answering. Career termination, psychological discharge, forced medical evaluations, confidential relocation agreements. Her voice cracked slightly. Some were institutionalized after reporting him. Elena slowly turned toward Hale in disbelief. You destroyed them. Hale remained unnaturally calm. I protected National Command integrity. You erased them. They became threats to operational structure. The emotional emptiness in his voice horrified Elena more than shouting would have done. Rebecca stepped closer toward Elena urgently. The archive contains everything. Surveillance logs, psychological evaluations, coercion reports, internal complaints buried under executive clearance. Hale's weapon shifted slightly toward Rebecca. Enough. But Rebecca kept talking. He studies people until he finds what they fear most: careers, reputation, isolation. Then he slowly builds emotional dependency, until they stop trusting themselves. Elaine's heartbeat pounded violently now because every word matched exactly what she'd been experiencing since entering level 7. The confusion, the manipulation, the constant pressure to doubt her own instincts. Helene noticed the realization happening across her face. And for the first time all night, something dangerous entered his expression. Desperation. Elena, he said quietly, you are allowing emotional people to distort strategic realities. Rebecca laughed bitterly again. Listen to him. She looked toward Elena. Even now he talks like a system instead of a human being. Hale suddenly aimed the weapon directly at Rebecca. Put the folder down. This time the threat felt real. Elena stepped forward instinctively. General, stay out of this. His voice cracked through the archive room like a command he expected absolute obedience to. But something inside Elena had changed already. The fear was still there, the pressure, the danger, but underneath it now lived anger. Not emotional confusion. Clarity. She looked around the archive room again, at the walls covered in surveillance photographs, the psychological profiling documents, the ruined careers hidden inside classified files. This entire floor was built from fear, and Marcus Hale believed fear made him untouchable. Rebecca slowly opened the black folder. Inside were dozens of signed testimony, reports, names, dates, recorded accusations. Women from every branch of command. Elena recognized several names. From the portrait hallway upstairs. One page fell partially open, revealing a sentence highlighted in red. Subject exhibits classic trauma responses after extended isolation conditioning. Elena's stomach turned. Hale moved forward instantly. Close it. Rebecca looked directly at him. No. The general's composure finally cracked. You think releasing those files changes anything? His voice echoed violently through the archives now. Do you understand what happens to institutions when command structures collapse? Rebecca's eyes filled with exhausted fury. Maybe they deserve to collapse. Hale's weapon remained fixed on her chest. Then suddenly Elena moved fast. Years of military reflex training took over automatically, grabbed Hale's wrist sharply and redirected the sidearm sideways. Just as the shot fired, the gunshot exploded through the archive chamber. Glass shattered somewhere behind them. Rebecca screamed, slammed Elena violently against a storage shelf with shocking force. Classified folders crashed across the floor around them, while emergency lights flickered harder overhead. Elena, Rebecca shouted. Hale grabbed Elena by the throat, just enough to pin her against the metal shelves without fully choking her. His calm mask was finally gone now. Pure control remained underneath. Have no idea what survives outside order, he whispered, harshly, inches from her face. Elena struggled against him desperately. You're not order, she gasped. Your fear. Something shifted in Hale's eyes, then rage, real rage, because she finally understood him, and dangerous men became most unstable when somebody recognized what they truly were beneath power. Then another voice suddenly thundered across the archive room. Drop the weapon. Massive tactical lights exploded through the darkness from every corridor entrance simultaneously. Armed military investigators flooded the archive sector with rifles raised while red laser sights covered Hale instantly from every angle. Rebecca staggered backward, breathing hard. Hale slowly released Elena. For several long seconds, nobody moved. Then the lead investigator stepped forward, holding federal authorization credentials. General Marcus Hale, he announced coldly, you are under investigation for unlawful surveillance, coercive misconduct, abuse of command authority, witness intimidation, and classified operational violations. Silence consumed the archives. Hale looked around slowly at the armed personnel surrounding him. Then toward Elena. No fear existed in his face anymore, only disappointment. You think this ends systems like me? He asked quietly. Elena stared back, breathing unevenly. No, she answered softly, but it ends your silence. The tactical team moved forward, weapons secured. Files seized. Emergency alarms still pulsing faintly overhead, while level 7 finally began collapsing around the secrets it spent years hiding. And as Elena stood inside the ruined archive room watching investigators remove the portraits from the walls one by one, she realized something emotionally devastating. Most dangerous part of Marcus Hale was never the private elevator. Or the penthouse, or the surveillance. It was how many people already knew. And stayed silent anyway. Because inside powerful institutions, fear survives longer than truth, until somebody finally refuses to carry it anymore.